Hi, everyone. Phil Turek here. Another episode of Martians on Earth, Season 2, Episode 2. This is about contagious behaviors. Interesting. So I recently read an article, and so this is my idea of a quick response to seeing this interesting article online. A yawn is something that can be contagious. Although we don't understand it, what's really the cause of yawning? There is an interesting story that the link to it's on the left here. So if you are younger than 5 years old, you are not contagious. You're not susceptible to yawning when you see other people yawning okay, once you're older, like the person on the right, yes, uh, a yawn can be contagious. Even if you're talking to someone on the phone and they yawn, you tend to become susceptible and inclined to catch that. So it's very interesting, right? Because that can't be something that's physically transmitted over the telephone line. All right, so whatever it is, yawn is an example of contagious behavior. Now, there was an article that just came out, and to get into that, let's work through what the definition is of a sociopath. It's a noun, it's a person who has extreme antisocial attitudes and a lack of conscience. Okay, so this is the new Google beta testing, whatever they call it, about, you search for an explanation or definition and it brings up a list of information. So here's its list of information. It's a chronic mental health condition, can't tell right from wrong, no remorse or regret, deceit, easily becomes angry, uh, easily become bored. Now, the point of this article wasn't to define what a sociopath was. The article was written by a neuroscientist, and the title is a little bit obscured by me right now. Let me see if I can adjust that. So the title of this article is about how we currently have politicians who seem to be sociopathic, starting with our newly elected incoming leader in the United States, who, in the viewpoint of neuroscientists, is clearly, without question, at least sociopathic, if not, what is it? Psychopathic, something like that. Okay, you can read the article. There, here's my condensed condensed form of sharing the article with you. So these are people who uh, tend to reject the concept of responsibility, for example, and they're politicians. And in the article, they list at least three different types they're pointing out. This one guy, not they. This one guy is pointing out. So first of all, there's this guy with deep-seated, and it's a core feature of who he is, that he is definitely, without question, a sociopath. And then there's people who kind of play along with it, and it infects them, and then they buy into it and say, okay, I'm going to be shameless. And look what that does for me. I can go and I could make people feel bad, and I can make them angry and just, raise their internal blood pressure. And this is fun, right? I get to manipulate other people and I have power over them. So that's the second group. And he lists some politicians that he feels fit in that category. And then the third ones are these people who are just, they allow it to happen. They go along with it. They don't do anything to say, hey, this isn't right. This isn't good behavior. And so it allows this contagious behavior to propagate. There you go. Interesting, right? Oh, I see. I misspelled which. Sorry, I'm not going to fix it now. What I do want to go on is next slide. So then I Googled it and said, well, what are examples of contagious behaviors, right? So laughter is one of them. Okay, so if I start laughing, you're not going to. I know, but it was a thought. Okay, smiling. If you're cold, shivering, yawning, I already covered. But, when I was undergoing the annual teacher training on, things to be aware of, self-harm was one of them. So if there is a significant event where someone commits suicide, then there tend to be an uptick in people who follow suit on that. So it's a contagious behavior. And part of our training as teachers is to be aware that that will tend to happen if one person goes, particularly if it's an influential person, what do you call it, a social influencer, then other people can become infected with it and start acting out on that. Okay, so positive and negative mood states, all these different things, and there's more, but this is enough of a list to say, look, being a sociopath is an example of contagious behavior, along with all these other examples of things that can be done. Now, my primary interest isn't trying to denigrate the political leadership of the United States, although, okay, side effect. I don't disagree with the author for that article, except for maybe one exception. I'm not sure which category they should really go into. But here's how I just want to close out for today. This is basically my last slide already. What are my thoughts and my suggestions for building a viable Martian society that avoids the pitfalls that we seem to have fallen into here in the United States early in the 21st century? So my first thought is, okay, we have not yet, as a society, really gotten a handle on how to handle the internet and the social media that goes with that. This came about in my lifetime. I remember the very first time that I connected to the World Wide Web, and it was this feeling of, wow, I am plugging into the planetary brain, and I think I would rather die than become unplugged from it. Okay, so that strong feeling of me way back, oh gosh, 3 decades ago, something like that. And today, students in high school have no memory of anything before the internet existed. And so here we are. This is one of the issues that I think you're going to have to work through as you create a Martian society that avoids our problems. It apparently inadvertently nurtures sociopathic behavior and contagion, partly because we can be anonymous. We can insult someone online without being traced as to who we are. This also goes along with the dark web and criminal activity and hacking. Those are people who, do all these bad things and they get away with it because it's so hard to associate a specific individual or even a nation state with a specific action that takes place or message or malware that is out there in cyberspace. So, in the name of privacy, we have all this anonymity. Whew. But if you're going to have a successful Martian society, that's something you're going to have to address. And I think leaving it anonymous is not the best way to go. People need to be responsible for what they say. They need to be held accountable for what they do. If they bully someone online, it needs to be identifiable who's the bully. So as you set up your communication system and your societal norms for a Martian society, balancing what here in the United States we refer to as your First Amendment rights of free speech versus uh, we do have a criteria that says it's not right to yell fire in a crowded movie theater if there isn't an actual fire. Okay, so that's kind of the threshold that we use right now for what's considered allowable and not allowable speech. But I think you Martians need to really come to grips with anonymous bullying that inadvertently nurtures sociopathic behavior. If you take a look at my last episode, you'll see that that's kind of a theme that's starting to emerge here is that the internet, cyberspace nurtures stuff that we don't really consciously really recognize some of the time. So, what's the image down here at the bottom? I am going to put more time into episodes that deal with my new thinking from this past summer. There's an image there of a drawing, and there's the link to the website about a village in the Iroquois Nation. And my takeaway from this past summer is that their society, their culture, was very good at preventing contagion of negative behaviors. They didn't have rapes, they didn't have stealing, they didn't have murder as a general rule. They didn't have promiscuity, I'll say, as far as I can establish. They did have a lot of positive behavior. And so what is it that let them be, the shining example that we should try to emulate? They apparently carried it out for centuries. I think, and this is what I want to go into in some later episode, I think part of it has to deal with their physical choice of not having land ownership. And the philosopher Rousseau delved into that quite a bit in his studies. So I'll come back to that next, another episode. But not having land ownership prevented the idea of class distinction between the haves and the have-nots. Physically, they lived in longhouses in the Iroquois Nation. So your family, and then your clan, and then your tribe was the social structure. And if you and a group of people are living in this sort of communal living arrangement, it helped to nurture positive behavior, a community spirit, caring for everyone, whether they're old or feeble. They had some resilient, remarkable, positive social and cultural behaviors that I would love to see the Martians to adapt. And structurally, housing on Mars really, it's hard to imagine that it would be individual houses distinct from each other, since having, radiation shielding and everything else you need to be viable for living on Mars on such a small scale down at the family unit or even individual unit is not as practical as having it on a little bit larger scale for housing, right? You're not going to have individual houses as much as you're going to have apartments and condominiums, less individual land ownership and more of a communal setting, I think is one of the takeaways from how the Iroquois were so successful for centuries to have a peaceful, thriving civilization. And that's what I'd like to see for Mars. Okay, so that's it. I really don't have anything else to share with you on this particular occasion. So short, sweet, food for thought, and onward to Mars. All right, bye.